trying to keep my voice going because it's like kind of raspy and out right now. And if I stop, then it like that's when it starts choking up.
You got the post ultra throat condition, man.
It's actually from teaching like earlier last week and just hasn't gone away.
Really? Yeah. I'm sure running 100Ks didn't help out, but
yeah, no.
Anthony Costales, welcome to the podcast, my friend. It's really nice to see you and super appreciative of your time. And I think the best places to start is just to hear how you're feeling a couple of days removed from your awesome victory at the Canyons 100K.
Feeling pretty good. Surprisingly, I thought the body would be a little bit worse than it is, but I said earlier to some people, I think like with the way the terrain is in California, how nice the dirt is and everything, I think it helps you out a little bit more on recovery than most races.
It's so true. I think California makes people soft in so many ways. The weather is so good. The trails are so soft. There's like barely a rock to be seen in the entire state outside of Yosemite. But well, congratulations, man. You had an amazing race and we're going to go into it in great detail. But I think obviously a lot of people who are going to be listening to the show probably heard your name for the first time after this race. You've been on the scene for a few years now and you've amassed quite a resume in a few years. And this was your 100K debut. But before we get into the drama in the Sierras this weekend, let's go back. And why don't you start by just introducing yourself to the audience? Maybe tell us a little bit about your childhood, your history with running, and whatever else you think is relevant to do justice to your story.
Try to do that as quick or good and quick as possible. Born and raised not too far away from where we raced in California, Fairfield, California. It sits like right between San Francisco and Sacramento. Funny enough, like kind of the first trail run I ever did in high school, our coach actually took us up to Auburn and took us up, maybe even on part of the trail we were on that day as like the first place I ever like kind of experienced like a real trail run. So it's always kind of cool when you get to go back there and experience that. Grew up there, ran like a little not too competitive stuff in like junior high, but got more serious in track and cross country in high school. Had a really good high school coach like that would drive again out of his way. Like it's almost like an hour and a half out of his way to take a bunch of high school kids up to go see a trail. So it's pretty cool. And then, from there went, stayed in the Sac area, went to American River Junior College. And, again, we still hit the same trails up and, went on a little bit more north, to Chico State.
Yeah. Chico State has quite a legacy now of creating, these assassin trail runners. I want to actually talk about that, but
we need to do a cross country race with it.
Exactly. The Chico gang would absolutely murder a cross country scoring race of an ultra marathon with you and Tim Tollefson and Jimmy Elam. I don't know if I'm missing anybody else that
there's a couple. There's one new kid. I think he's I'm forgetting his name right now. He's way before me. Connor Fisher, I think it is. He did Black Canyon. It was like top, like around like 10th. And it was the first 100K. He went from 10K to 100K. So
nice.
Not too bad. So,
nice. Yeah. Well, you've taken a little bit easier of a progression and you've been very successful in every race distance that you've done. Actually, this is funny because you and I don't know each other, I guess we should say before we launch into everything, but I've sort of, kind of followed your career and admired you. And really the only time we've sort of interacted was, and this is not a brag. This is not a brag at all.
Oh, I know where it's going. I know.
Yeah. So I passed you at like mile 49 of the TNF 50. Yeah. Both of us were completely. Yeah. It was amazing.
Man, that day.
Yeah. So I don't know. I guess maybe give a little color commentary there because the TNF 50 was your first 50-mile race from what I remember. You and I were both going in sort of coming off our own injuries, and we both did our best to sort of be competitive, and ultimately our legs both completely failed us, and we finished respectably. But
I thought we did. I thought we finished. We got it done, and I think a lot of people wouldn't have. So I felt felt good about finishing that last 7 miles because it was pretty brutal.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was right on the, I remember it was right on the Golden Gate Bridge, right in the middle. Like and you said something really funny, like, what the hell happened out there? We didn't really have an excuse other than injuries. Like the day was perfect.
Yeah.
But was it funny? Like it was such a nice day out there.
It was actually like kind of one of those mysterious days because it seemed like so many people had rough
days.
It was strange. I think it may have been kind of humid. Anyway, we don't need to talk about 50 in 2019, but it's funny because that's really our only interaction now. And you've clearly, evolved as an athlete since then, and you proved that you could go longer than 50K this past weekend at Canyons, which again we'll get to. But I want to spend a little bit more time talking about your history. So, I mean, obviously you live in Salt Lake City now, but you grew up in California. So I guess just fill us in. How'd you end up in Salt Lake? And how long have you been there?
I've been there. It's getting longer and longer now. I think I'm my 7th year in teaching. So 7 years. So it'd be, 7 years. Came here right after graduating from Chico State. I did a teaching credential over there. And while I was doing a teaching credential, my girlfriend, now wife, she was ready to get out of Chico, and she found a job, and she had a little bit of family she could just stay with out here, and just kind of took a random job. And then as she was out here, she got a better job, and then drew me out here. I always thought I was gonna kind of end up in Colorado or something like that. Mm-hmm. And then I came to visit her, and I was like, wow, this is awesome here. And the first thing we did was we went to Brighton Ski Resort, and I was thinking, being from California, it's gonna take a little bit to get there. And we drive out of her aunt's house, and 15 minutes later we're driving in this canyon, and 25 more minutes later we're there at the ski resort. And I was like, no way, this is awesome.
Yeah.
So that's what got me out there. And she, my wife Katie, flirted the idea of leaving once I got out there pretty early after, and then she couldn't take me away from it, is what it's been more than anything.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. So we really love it out here. And not just Salt Lake City, we go to Moab way too much, and we take advantage of that too.
That's sweet. So is your wife from California too?
Yeah, she's Southern California. So I guess she's
cool. California. Just a couple Cali people landed in Salt Lake. So what do you do for work there?
I'm a junior high PE teacher.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you're grooming the next generation of athletes to take your mantle eventually. Well, that's cool.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think Salt Lake is just such an underrated destination. And I want to talk a little bit about kind of the group that you guys have forming out there. But as you said, the access to the Alpine, but also having a lot of, I guess probably a drier environment, a little bit lower altitude than a lot of the Mountain West. And the ability to go from downtown Salt Lake City to Alta or Brighton or even Park City in
an hour.
It's like an amazing training destination. And
it is really cool. It's there's all the ski resorts that you just said are right there. University of Utah sits kind of at the highest part of the city, and right behind the University of Utah is the Bonneville Shoreline Trails and the foothills over there. And those, like you said, those are a lot more dry, and there's always something there's very few days of the year where something isn't runnable on a trail. During this month, you go to the foothills, or a month later, as that's drying up, you go get some really hard packed snow in Park City and so on. So it's kind of nice that you have a lot of options in different environments in such a close place.
Yeah. I mean, as we said to start the conversation, California makes people soft in a lot of ways. And there's so many great year-round training destinations in California. And, but Salt Lake City is just so cool. And we'll eventually get around to talking about what your guys' training environment is like. But it seems year-round, you can obviously get super fit early in the season, as you've proven this year. But before we kind of fast forward, I'd love to kind of learn a little bit more about this whole Chico theme. I listened to
Yeah.
Mario Fraioli's podcast with Coach Gary Town, which I thought was awesome.
Yeah,
I wondered if you wanted to kind of talk about your experience there. And I know you've spoken a little bit in the past about sort of seeing your contemporaries in Tim and Jimmy sort of making a push on the trail scene and how that motivated you. So maybe talk a little bit about Coach Town and your fellow Chico State graduates and how they've inspired you.
Yeah. So Gary Town, I think, a lot of the reasons why he's producing some of these trail athletes is because we ran on the trails a lot. Every Sunday, 9:00, we'd be somewhere, we'd be like one of 5 places that was trail themed. And sometimes you could kind of pick how technical you wanted the day. But, a lot of college coaches don't do that. They're so scared of their athlete rolling an ankle or something like that, that they don't get to experience that. And then we were also very fortunate that we had so many destinations within like a 25 or a whole 45 minutes away, which we thought was a big deal back then, to go do these awesome, great trail runs. So I think that's like one of the big things. I was never a part of this, but I'm pretty positive Jimmy and Tim were. A lot of our team goes out to Truckee and trains for the summer together. They get houses, they get jobs, and they pack in way too many people into some giant house in Truckee and Splint Ret, and they work at there's a couple of different jobs that they pick up really quickly. And again, they're just like in that trail environment. And I think that has to do a little something with why you've seen Chico or produce, or just seen a lot of Chico people come out on the trails a lot.
Yeah, it's a fascinating theme. And I think Gary Town is probably noticing a pattern himself and maybe starting to, prepare people for their post-collegiate careers as trail runners. And for you, when you graduated, it seemed like you sort of were focusing more on kind of the road scene, doing some marathons. And I think you've done the Olympic trials and things like that. So talk about how you visualized your own racing and training going post-collegiately. Did you always kind of want to make a go of things professionally? Did you have sort of Olympic aspirations or?
The main thing was, I went to school and I really did want to become it was like, I was more like thinking coaching back then. But a PE teacher and doing coaching, and I did a credential program with junior high, and I never thought I was going to get into junior high because I thought I'd be coaching high school or hopefully collegiately one day. And I just really enjoyed it. And kind of you're able to do like easy coaching with not as serious coaching with junior high, which is kind of cool because it gives me a little bit more time to kind of go do my own training, which is awesome.
Yep.
And I just feel like I like the curriculum a lot more. I'm trying to think of why that kind of led into that, but so that's kind of, or that was kind of the main focus, like out of college. But to your question, like to what I was seeing myself like professional or to do as a running athlete after college. There was like SRA, the elite group in Sacramento that I had ties with, and I knew I was going to go run with them. Tim was running with them at the time.
Right.
And there was just a couple role models right after out of college that what they were doing, I kind of want to do. And the big two were Tim Tolson and Danny Tapia. I was a junior college. I ran against him in junior college, and we were like pretty good friends, like frenemies on days. And he won CIM marathon in 2012, and I helped pace him the first 12 or 13 before he dropped me. Huh. And after that, that's when I was like, I want to go do that one day, like what he did. And I didn't even really know too much about like Olympic trials and all that kind of stuff. And then when we heard Tim got the qualifier, like it was like this new like kind of goal post thing to do after college. So Tim on the road actually is like kind of what got me doing that. And then Tim again later is the reason why I got into trail running. So it's a lot of his story.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about CIM, because I think that's an interesting thread here too. And that you said that you paced one of your personal inspirations to victory, or at least did your part in helping him secure a victory that day. And
in Tulsa as well to Olympic
really?
trials too.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was the next year.
What a great story! But you've had some success there as well. I think you went and raced there, and I guess it was 2018 there when you ran 2:13 or so?
So, yeah, it was 2017 or sorry, 2015 was when I ran 2:18. That was my debut.
Okay.
And it strictly was like going for the trial standard. And then that was 2015 and 2017. You always think it's the next year because December is so close to the year.
Yeah, right.
2017 was, had a really good one at the USATF championships, and then had another solid one the next year at the USATF championships in 2018 there.
And that's where you set your PR. And that was the day where everybody in the field set a PR. It was like the most perfect weather in marathon history. Talk about that race a little bit.
Well, I mean, it was like one of the few races that, like a bunch of Americans could ran like Americans and paced with each other and you go to Chicago and, it's an international race. If you want to race in the front, it's not going to be a smooth race. And that day it was like, we were like 5:05s, like every single mile. Like it was just a huge pack of us. And it was almost like more of a time trial. It felt like the first half marathon, 17 miles. And then maybe the last five is when bows were starting to get thrown. Yeah. So I think that's why. So, I mean, it was perfect weather. Everyone's going to talk about the net downhill, but I think more than anything, it was just, and kind of like you're seeing right now in COVID today, you're seeing all these PRs because all these people are getting these perfectly paced races. And that's kind of how I felt like it was in 2017.
That's super interesting. Yeah. With these PRs and these kind of more controlled race environments like Des 50K and some of the stuff that the Bowerman athletes are doing. It's so funny remembering back to that 2018 CIM, because that was the year that TNF 50 was canceled due to the wildfires. Yeah. And I had been living in California for a while at that point and had probably 10 friends who were doing CIM, some of whom only transferred into CIM after TNF 50 had been canceled. Mm-hmm. And like every single person ran a PR that day. It was the best conditions.
It's 2 years in a row. And it was like the same story, but 2 years in a row. It was weird. And then that year that I told you about, Danny, that guy paced that one at Danny, it was a horrific rainstorm. It was insane that day. So, I mean, every once in a while you get that, but usually it's a pretty perfect day in December. And one thing I always like to bring up too is like, you get a great training block. Like if you run Chicago, like your big part of your training block is in August, and that's a pretty brutal time for a lot of people to be training. Where CIM, October is not a bad time in most places with your biggest mileage, and I think that's another thing that plays into that CIM magic as well. Yeah,
cool. Well, obviously we want to leave plenty of time to talk about your race this past weekend, but you've been in the sport or been in the sort of trail scene for the last few years. You've had some awesome results. You've won the Moab Red Hot 55K a couple of times, which is one of the sort of premier early season races in the Mountain West. You've won Way Too Cool, which of course everybody knows is one of the premier early season races. And you're now sort of figuring out the longer distance stuff too, after a tough one at TNF 50 that obviously you didn't go into fully primed, but and then it seems like in 2020, you finished third at the Speed Goat 50K near your home there in Utah. I wondered if before we transfer or sort of transition and start talking more about canyons, if you want to talk a little bit about 2020, about coming off that TNF 50 in 2019. What did you do in 2020 in the year kind of without racing? You can sort of talk about that Speed Goat 50K race if you want, but obviously you started 2021 so strong. So I guess what I'm curious about is what you did during the pandemic year that you think set you up so well to start the year off so strong.
So pandemic year happened. So TNF happened. Again, like you said, I was injured going into that. I I shouldn't have ran that day. It was really just being stubborn.
Neither should I shouldn't have either.
I had more elliptical minutes than running minutes at the time. And and it took me a while to recover from that. And then my sports hernia was still kind of bugging me. So then I unfortunately had to take a little bit of extra time off for it, and it threw the Olympic trials out of the window. And kind of the only reason why I showed up to Olympic trials was I had people showing up, tickets and all that. And I had like just enough time where I could get there, run the race like decently, just run, like I could make it through. And I think my first run, it was like on Christmas Day, and it was like 15 minutes. So I had like that much of a timeline for the end of February to get ready. And, got through that. It was, did what I needed to do there. And then the pandemic hit 2 weeks later. I mean, that was the last normal thing actually, was the Olympic trials. And then, a few weeks later, all the races started getting canceled. And I was actually starting to get really good fitness for Lake Sonoma. And, that got canceled, and kind of took a couple easy weeks off. But then Jimmy talked me into doing this thing we call the Bow Show out here. And it's basically every year the Salt Lake City Marathon happens. There's a bandit marathon that happens in the foothills. And it's like this like unofficial race that gets everyone. There's like official times on the website, but it's an unofficial race. It's really bizarre. I never done it. And since it was pandemic, people didn't show up all together. It was like kind of go do it on your own type of thing and put your Strava in. So him and I went out and did that. He did all the navigation on it because it is kind of a pain in the butt. And he dragged me out there and we did it, and set the new like course record for it, which was actually Noah's course record.
Yeah.
And so that was really fun. And then kind of was unmotivated for a little bit, thinking no races were happening, and was running a little bit again, but nothing too crazy structured. And then Speedgoat was saying it was going to happen, and we had our doubts that it was going to happen. And I signed up just for the heck of it, even though Speedgoat always scares me because I watch people run that race, and
it's such a brutal race.
It's man. So brutal. I don't know why you would ever do that. Like Sage has done that like race so many times, and I'm like, I don't know how you just keep going.
I've done it twice, and I'm absolutely of the never again. And obviously, no disrespect to Carl Melton who's on the race, and he does a great job, and he puts money on the line for the pros, and he's obviously a legend of the game himself. But the race is just like unreasonably and obnoxiously hard, and just like the weirdest ways. Yeah.
Well, I previewed that course, so like I started previewing the course, and which was funny. Like a few weeks before, I parked the car, and I parked right next to Carl at the time. And we're talking, and like both of us are saying, like the race director is saying, like, yeah, this is probably not going to happen at the time. And so I previewed a bunch, and I remember like there's one section I didn't preview, and I thought about not doing it. It was like the end of the race when you come off the top of Hidden Peak.
Yeah.
I was like, it's like the same thing going back. Like it's not a big deal. I don't need to do that. And I decided to do it, and I was like, oh my gosh, if I would have went into this blind, I'd have been so pissed.
It's
totally unreasonable.
That's like the worst part of the race. Yeah,
I know. And you think it's all downhill to the finish, and it's not. It's like you're scrambling through all this stuff. But so then, I got on the waiting list, and I did that. And then the race ends up happening. You're like, crap, I'm doing Speedgoat now. And it was cool though, because it was a really competitive, there's a lot of big names showing up. So that was like the big incentive to do it. And I had a pretty good day, or a really good day. As good of the day as I could have asked for, with like a year of like injuries in 2019, and then not being able to race the first half of 2020.
Do those types of races inspire you? I mean, obviously you've got the 2:13 marathon pedigree. You can smash it, as you've proven at races like Way Too Cool and now Canyons.
Yeah.
Do the more mountainous, more technical races also inspire you? Do you feel like those suit your skill set?
Yeah, well, I mean, it doesn't suit my skill set. I don't think I'm terrible at it. I don't think it's best thing at the same time. I think I can handle it well. I think I can handle everything kind of pretty well. But a lot of the races I've been trying to do, like some of these Golden Trail series, like Mount Blanc and like those, like, you know, like I'm going to need to learn how to descent pretty well and not easy terrain sometimes. And that was one of the big reasons to do Speedgo. And, you know, it seems so miserable. Like if you get through that, then something like canyons is really not that big of a deal. And it kind of felt like that the other day. So.
Yeah, it's so true. I feel a little bit bad for saying that about Speedgoat. It is an awesome race, and it's totally worthwhile for people to do. It's just kicked the shit out of me twice. And, and I don't need to prove anything anymore in that race course. It's beaten me into submission enough. Well, that's awesome, man. I mean, well, obviously like 2020 worked out well for you just in looking at how your 2021 has started. You went back and won the Moab Red Hot 55K again in February. And then you won another race in Utah, the Behind the Rocks 50 in March, before obviously smashing canyons this past weekend. So a trifecta of wins under your belt. Maybe talk about how the year has started for you with 2020 in the rearview mirror now, and how those two races set you up for success at Canyons.
Well, the start of the year, one thing was I kind of didn't run a lot, and like this goes back a little bit more, but like September, I just kind of had a little nagging injury, and then I finally kind of took time off after Jimmy won his bear hunter, because it kind of inspired me a little bit. I'm like, I need to figure this out. Yes. And took a lot of time off, like, and stopped doing I'm going to run every 3 days and still be injured. And finally got the injury everything all figured out by pretty much beginning of November. And I had my first child, and my wife and I had our first child in November, or the end of November. So it's just starting to come back. So
time out for a sec. Yeah. But that means that you were basically injured from before TNF 50 all the way until kind of November of the following year, huh? So you were sort of compromised for a year, huh?
Yeah. So, you know, it was my own fault, because I was like getting like braggy about it almost, I feel like, but I didn't get injured for like almost like 6 or 7 years.
Dude, I did the same thing, man. And I convinced myself that I couldn't get injured. And then in 2019, my life fell apart, including my body.
And I just totally
so arrogant. Yeah.
I was relating it to my job, because like I move around so much on my job and just do so many random different things. That's like almost like this little bit of training that, you know, doesn't get accounted for. And you know, I do all those basic things. You know, I do drills before workout. I do a lot of little things. So, but anyway, I got that first sports. It was like started out with a hip injury, then a sports hernia, and that was like that was 2019, which knocked me out of Sonoma. And then what happened was I, like in the later part of the summer 2019, finally was getting the sports hernia was getting fixed, and I was getting back to normal. And then it was the end of September, the sports hernia came back, and I was stubborn about it and didn't treat it the way I should have, and then ran North Base anyway on it. And so the last injury I was talking about, it was pretty minor. It was just still, we were in the middle of the pandemic. There's no races.
Yeah. Okay.
And I just kind of needed like some time off, not so much from it all, like not thinking like I need to rehab this as fast as I can so I get to the next race. And that was the exhausting part, was not so much being injured and the cross training, but just like thinking about the next thing and trying to get there in time.
Yeah.
So it was really nice to take that long block of time off.
Yeah.
And not worry about it.
Such a good point, isn't it? It's like when we're injured and we still place something on the calendar of like, oh, well, I'm going to be injured now and I'm going to rehab and stuff, but then I'm going to do this race. Mm-hmm. And then as you get closer and it becomes more and more clear that you're not going to be in good form, you either force yourself to do it anyway and set yourself back, or you just get super disappointed and have to pull out. And you got to really just kind of embrace the injury and allow yourself to heal before you start putting things back on the calendar again. It's another big learning experience from my year of injury as well. So anyway, we were talking about how you started the year this year and how those two races set you up for Canyon so well last weekend.
They set me up well. It was Red Hot was supposed to be way too cool 50K. That's what I was planning to do, but it got canceled. And then which is funny because it was like I did like a really big long run. It got canceled like that day. And then like randomly Red Hot was like, do you want to come race? And it was like 2 weeks later. I was like, man, like just did like a 30-mile run or a 20-mile run today. And I just took advantage of it and went to go do it anyway. And again, it's just, we go out to Moab anyway, just the excuse to go out there, and did that race. Went really well, just kind of tuned some things up. And that's just a really fun race to how fast you could run it. And yeah, I hadn't done that in a long time. So that was really cool. And there's the technical terrain is fun. And then the Behind the Rocks was more of a training run, and what can I figure out? What little things do I need to figure out now? So then when I go to canyons, I don't mess up later. And I figured out a few of them out, like, like make sure your batteries and your headlamp are fully charged, because they weren't that day and I could barely see the first 45 minutes of the run. And there was some other stuff happened as well. But so that was like kind of the main incentive, and to get a 6-7 hour long run in was other idea.
That's great. So you use it mostly as training. Can you give us some insight into how you train? I think you put most of your stuff on Strava. I was just perusing a little bit, didn't have a ton of time to go into the details, but maybe talk a little bit about whether or not you have a coach. If so, kind of what are you guys working on? If not, how do you kind of navigate your training on your own?
For a coach, I don't have a coach. I don't know. I've been able to pull it off without a coach, I guess, is one reason. In the early years out of college, my college coach, I right away was like, oh, you're going to still coach me. And he kind of gave me a look like, no, I'm not, because he has a lot of athletes to work with.
Is that Gary Town?
Yeah, Gary Town. But I mean, it was super unreasonable the way I approached it. Yeah. And like, he was going to do it, but I could like tell his boys like, yeah, I shouldn't be asking. And I knew I was his assistant coach. He didn't have the time to just take on every alumni that wants to continue to coach him. So what happened was, I was like, well, you set up something with one of our other alums, Aaliyah Gray, who's like she was like a top 10 runner at US Trials. I was like, you gave her a CIM plan. Like, how about you just give me that and I could kind of work with it. And I joked around. He was like more my advisor that year. Like, I would call him every like month and be like, this is what's going on. Like, what do you think? Or, if like someone was coming up, he just give me some advice more than like the coach you talk to every day or every week. Yeah. And it worked out really well. Was able to put a strong debut marathon together. And after that, really been coached on my own. I came back to him once other time because I was coming out of injury and it was for the trials. And I just didn't want to get re-injured. So I just needed a little bit of guidance to not mess things up. But yeah, coach myself, and for runs and Strava and all that. What you see on Strava is, I don't know, probably 75% of what I do.
Yeah, you got some secret training. You're not.
No, I didn't. No, Jimmy always like gets on me about it. He's like, you got to put everything on Strava. I'm like, I can't. All right, I like using it, but it's so much data sometimes. I need to get away from it. And so it's not like secret training at all. I just sometimes don't like to know how fast I'm going on an aerobic run or stuff like that. So
you just won't bring a watch with you at all.
Yeah. For most of the years, I didn't on any aerobic run. I wouldn't even use a watch. Lately, and I've gotten better at it now. I do a lot of my aerobic runs to work and back, and to save time. And Strava has that commute feature on it, and I thought that was kind of cool. So that's the reason why I log aerobic runs now, is because I kind of want to see what my commute miles are at the end of the year, I guess.
Yeah.
Kind of a cool feature. But yeah, I only use it most of the time when you see something posted is because I want to see what I need to see it.
Okay.
Or I needed a workout. I needed to use the watch for the workout. But I've been using a lot more this year than I ever have. But I mean, if you go back to my Strava, like the few years before, it'd be probably 30% of my runs would be in there.
Well, if you're open to sharing, maybe give us a little glimpse into what your training was like going into canyons, or as somebody who's self-coached, what the strategy was behind the workouts and the long runs that you were doing, and how you think they may have set you up for success.
One of the things going into it, I knew the climbs weren't going to be crazy hard at canyons. I knew it was a lot of elevation gain, but again, like we said, the terrain is just so nice there that even if it's the same amount of feet per mile, it's not the same as it is out here when it's loose and rocky and just a little bit more steep. So one of the things at Speedgoat I learned was when it got like extremely steep on like Baldy or something like that, that's where like no, it just annihilated me. So I did a lot more of that because that's where I learned my weakest spot was at, even though that wasn't in the race much here. But it was really nice because nothing felt unreasonable at all during that race.
It reminds me of something that Jimmy said, I think on the podcast, and that he likes to make his training harder than the terrain that he's going to encounter during the race.
Mm-hmm. And I was probably just trying to talk myself up into it, and Noah was being like, more graceful about it. But we're talking about training. I'm like, I mean, nothing's going to be worse than like what we're doing in the foothills. He's like, and he got there a day before me and he's like, I mean, there's some stuff out there, and he's talking, and he's like, I mean, there's some rocks. I mean, there's a lot of pine needles on there right now. And I'm like, no, pine needles. Is that where we're at right now? I'm like, and then like, he's like, yeah, it's pretty smooth out there. And we just started backing up. And then of course during the race, like we did get on those pine needles and you're like slipping on them like it's snow.
Yeah.
That was really funny. But yeah, anyway, for training wise, I try to get two workouts in a week and a big long run. Sometimes a workout is mixed in with that long run, just depending on the schedule and where I'm at. Like I said, I have a 5-month-old, so got a lot of responsibilities right now, making sure I get home as quick as I can. So that's why I do a lot of the runs from work and back. And it's only 3.5 miles to my work, but I'll make it anywhere from 12, and 4 is pretty much the quickest, unless like I'm late to work or something like that. And I take the fastest route there.
Yeah.
Sometimes right after work, I'll run from work into a workout. If it's something I'm going to do, that's more like a fast workout.
You're one of those people who does hard workouts in the afternoon. It always blows my mind. I'm like, I have to do my training first thing in the morning, especially intensity. Otherwise, I'm completely useless.
It's so hard to. I mean, it's like it's hard for me
being on your feet all day. It's actually probably a great training stimulus, huh? Like as a gym teacher, you're sort of probably pretty tired. You've been on your feet most of the day, and then you got to go into a workout on sort of lower energy.
Yeah, honestly, I've been thinking about that a lot. Like when I'm looking at this 9-hour race, I'm like, well, like, I don't know, it's just like pretend you're running in the middle of your work day.
This is brilliant. This is brilliant. Yeah.
And I do a lot of stuff with the students, like playing games. So I'm like being active a lot of the time where I have to be standing. I'm not at a computer. So there's a ton of time on feet. And I've definitely thought about that. Like, during this training block, I guess, that you brought up. Usually try to get a really big long one. And on Saturday, the way the work schedule is with COVID right now, I get to go into work a tad bit later on Fridays with our students don't come in on Friday, so I get to come in a tad later. So I try to do an 18 in the morning before work. And then, so it's like a kind of a smaller long run. And then I do a longer long run in like the trails, more training based for like whatever trail race is coming up in the foothills, like on that Saturday morning.
Man, what a brilliant training strategy. And maybe you came about it accidentally just by virtue of what you do professionally. Yeah. But you can see how that, what your occupation as a gym teacher and being on your feet all day and then going out in the afternoons and doing a hard workout would translate well to the late stages of a 100K race as it did last weekend. So let's talk about the race itself. Maybe just give us the encapsulated blow by blow from your perspective. How did it play out for you? Any highlights or lowlights that you think are worth mentioning?
It was it was really a big chess match through 30. I feel like in the beginning, like I didn't know, like we were just hanging out. We were talking so much, like we were all buddies through like 20, 25 miles, and a couple hard sections, get quiet, then it get flat, and we'd start talking again. That was Noah, Max, new kid, or Preston. I'm not sure his last name, but knew the scene, which was totally cool kid out there. And
it's funny. I recorded a podcast just sort of debriefing the race.
Yeah, I listened to it.
Yeah. So we talked about this kid, Preston Cates. It seems like he was a character. It seems like everybody got a kick out of him.
Yeah, we were running right away from like pretty much mile one, and he was talking to me about some things and how long I've been in the sport and marathon. And I was learning, he was like, I think it was from Arkansas. He went to school at Arkansas and was fresh out of college, it sounded like. It was funny because like we're running together, and I hear like he's going for a golden ticket, he's saying it out loud, and I'm like, cool, like you never know, I mean, what's gonna happen, but like you said, he has his hydration pack on that looks like it's back in the 90s, and he's running like Nike road shoes, and I'm like, I will see how long he hit 6 round, and he's like, what's that, like 20, or what's that, like close to 30 miles, and I was like, man, this kid's going to do really well. Or like this poor kid at the same time. I wanted it too. And, but it was the funniest thing about it was there's a top point where Max, Noah, and I and Preston were running together, and he's talking to us, and he pretty much figures out right then, like we're all Solomon athletes.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, you guys are all Solomon athletes, right? Yeah. Because he's trying to figure out if we know each other. And Noah and I were like, yeah, we know each other, but we just know Max through like sponsorship stuff.
Sure.
And he's like, I just applied to you guys' camp.
Nice.
And it was just so funny. I'm like, this is awesome. This is like the perfect person that we wanted to apply to.
Yes.
Solomon camp. And he's like running with us through the first like 30 miles of this race. So it was a really cool story. We're like, you're going to get into that camp. Like after
amazing. I got to have this youngster on the podcast eventually.
Yeah, it was cool.
It sounds like an entertaining young man. So, all right. So let's talk. Yeah. So pick up sort of after halfway, you said you guys were sort of running fairly easy. It was a chess match. You were conversating through about halfway, which is Forest Hill. You're running backwards on the Western States course, more or less. At what point did you kind of start to pull away? And any other, like I said, highlights or lowlights there in the second half that you think are worth mentioning?
So we were all together, 25 or miles, or the aid station at 25. They kind of took off pretty quick, and I tried to wait up for Noah a little bit. He wasn't feeling too great, and it took me a while to catch back up to him. But I'm trying to think of it. So then up to Forest Hill. So there's 4 of us, and let's see. Basically, we were doing a lot of walking on some of the hills, which was fine in the beginning because some of them were steeper, and then we got to some of them, and I was like, again, being like where we train at, we were walking on some. I was like, I don't feel right like walking on this right now. Like, I know everyone keeps saying be patient, be patient, be patient. But I was like, are we being patient, or are we playing chess right now?
Yeah.
And I wasn't really sure. And then like I wasn't leading at the point, and it was like the last climb before Forest Hill. I was like, all right, I can't walk anymore like on this grade. Like I'm just gonna lightly run, and pulled away and I didn't know Forest Hill was right there. Pulled away barely by like 30 seconds by the time we got to Forest Hill.
Okay.
And then right then was when things kind of started really opening up after that aid station. Cole and I were running down the next like asphalt downhill for a while after Forest Hill.
Yep.
And then I was just a couple steps in front of him, and we were going down. And then we got done with that. I was like, oh, thank God we're off this asphalt, and trail shoes. And then I thought it was Cole, but it was actually Max. And then it was just him and I for a little bit. And over the next climb after that, I just slowly pulled away from Max. And then, it was kind of like you're not really sure where everybody's at that point.
Yeah.
I guess the biggest notable part of the race was after Michigan Bluff did the big downhill. And then we had I thought the biggest climb of the day was another like 3 miles up to the next aid station at Deadwood, Well, at Deadwood, there's an out and back section. It was only like a quarter or half mile out and back, which is great because you get to see where people are at if they're within striking distance of you. Well,
Approximately what mile is that?
That is around 45, I want to say. Yeah, 45 or 44. So at that point, I'm thinking it's Max or Cole for sure, right? Going to be behind me. And I've, knows my buddy, and I'm like a little bummed that he even said verbally, like, I'm not feeling too good, and thought he's having a bad day. And I'm coming down this out and back section, and all of a sudden, and I'm starting to feel it a little bit at that point because it was a long period of a uphill and just nobody to kind of like, the crowd gets your adrenaline up and stuff. So it was just kind of a little bit low. That was the only low point in the race, I'd say. And I'm coming down and it's Noah. And I got so stoked. I was like yelling like F yeah, because we're friends and we're taking this one too. And like having me, like he wasn't even that far behind. I was like, having me just want to wait for him, and I was like, awesome. I'm like, yeah. And I keep running and that's when I thought, I was like, well, I better start crushing it because Noah's a way better climber than me and I need to get going.
Yeah.
Everyone's saying the last part of the race is the hardest part. And so then I just started, trying to hold off Noah's from what I thought as long as I could at that point. And unfortunately he started to go backwards, not backwards, but he just started, Max ended up catching him, but he started to go backwards at that point. And I was able to cruise in, I guess, the last 10 miles of the race.
Hell yeah, dude. Congratulations. What an awesome description too of your feeling of seeing Noah. It's, I think, emblematic of the positive sum mentality in our sports, and seeing your training buddy not far behind you and it giving you just a huge inspiration and a note of personal pride of where you live and who you train with.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a great thing. And obviously Max took a wrong turn. Not long after you guys were probably running together on Bath Road.
It must have, I don't know where it happened.
Dude, you guys would have had a freaking battle if he didn't miss that turn.
Yeah, I'm like, dude, would have, I don't know, like, I don't know if it just pissed Max off and he just went into crazy mode, or if it,
dude, I think,
because man, I can't believe it.
I think he wanted that. I think he wanted that golden ticket desperately. And it was awesome to see. I'm so excited to see you guys race at Western States. So this was your 100K debut. Was there anything that you learned or that you think you could have done better as you look ahead towards Western States?
It was such a good day out there. It's kind of hard to like say many things. I feel like I could have done better.
I mean, that's a good feeling, man.
I feel like I was patient. I know I said like I couldn't handle like some of the walking more. It kind of took off, but I think that's just where fitness was and like training was on like the environments. Nutrition was extremely well. Kind of got just got to figure out how to add 40 more miles to it, I guess, is what it is now.
No, I mean, I think the challenge for you is, coming off such an awesome victory where you executed it well, where you were patient, where you ultimately won fairly comfortably, even though Max probably would have been much closer. I mean, you ran consistently and you closed well. It wasn't as if you cratered at the end or anything like that. So I think the challenge for you is more just to approach Western States with the same attitude and with the same respect for the distance, and but play the chess match a little bit and don't get too far ahead of yourselves, because you will have to run an extra 40 miles if all goes well.
The good thing is we've already run the elevation.
Yeah, it's awesome, man.
That's awesome, I guess.
There was some banter on the internet after you guys had finished the photograph of the three of you at the finish line, and you're holding your baby like you're about to pose for the Heisman Trophy. It's the most adorable thing ever. So talk a little bit about being a new dad with a 5-month-old, and maybe if that inspired you at all going into the race this weekend.
Well, what's funny is like that picture's on there, and actually I was just holding my baby, and then we all came together. And I grabbed my, I'm like, get the baby. Like not everybody wants a picture with a baby, and they're, of course, and that's the one they post. It was freaking
adorable, man.
I know, but cute. I don't know. it's just, it's interesting. It's just a personal thing, I guess. But so it was, it's been really, really, it's been going really well. She's a pretty good sleeper, so I'm really happy about that, because that could have been a really bad game changer for us. But still, I mean, I still wake up at 3:00 every other night to feed her and stuff. But it's a different lifestyle. Learned a lot from it. My wife and I just, really work well together, and she's extremely supportive of everything I do. So that's the only reason why it's able to happen.
Amazing.
So it's been a fun 5 months, and I guess inspiration, kind of haven't lost one yet, I guess. So that's kind of cool, because we've joked she's crewed at every single one of them, and she's going to sleep every single time I passed her. And it was Michigan Bluff I went past, and I could see the shore. I'm like, she awake? And they're like, no, she's asleep. I'm like, she's never awake when I run past.
She doesn't care, man.
She doesn't care. No, she's puzzled.
Yeah, now you got to keep the streak alive at Western States. But you got to get that picture framed, man, so that you can show your daughter in 25 years when she doesn't think you're cool anymore, or whatever you can say. Yeah. Like, when you were a baby, daddy was smashing these races.
Yeah, right.
And anyway, you'll be cool in her eyes forever. So so were you coming into Canyons with the express goal of capturing that golden ticket into Western States? And did you have any reluctance about taking it once you'd achieved it?
Going like into race day, I knew if I was getting top 2, I was going to take it. If you go backwards 2-3 weeks ago, it's less likely I would have took it. And then 6 weeks ago, or when I first signed up, I wasn't thinking about it really at all. I was planning to do Lake Sonoma, but that got canceled. And then what ended up happening was I just signed up for Canyons, even though I just kind of thought this is probably not going to happen anyway, but it's a SAC field. Like, we should still got to put your name in the hat just in case it does roll through. Surprisingly it went off. And then now you're thinking about the golden ticket a little bit more. And in that time of that happening, some races that I had planned going overseas got canceled. We still can't potentially travel overseas. U.S. athletes still up in the air right now, so is becoming more on the mind. And then the big factor, I think, is the field is so good there this year that if you got a gold ticket, you have to take it just because of that field that's there this year.
No doubt, man. And everybody's going to be very excited to see how you perform in such a stacked field. And coming into the race, you seem to have probably the fastest marathon PR of any of the guys in the field. Of course, you will have many really talented athletes with similar pedigree, like Jim Walmsley and Hayden Hawks and Max King and Tim Tollefson and Matt Daniels, Jared Hazen, all these super fast guys who sort of come from a more traditional road and track background like yourself. How are you thinking about the race strategically, about how you might approach it with such a stacked field? And also, how are you thinking ahead to the next 9 weeks of training that separate today from race day?
Thinking how we're going to approach it definitely depends on how training does go. Hopefully everything keeps rolling right off. Biggest thing is getting there healthy. It's 40 more miles. Gonna have to, talk to some experienced guys, even though might be racing some of them. Like, it's good to probably pick their brain, like maybe learn as much as I can. Hopefully have a good crew that's just a experienced crew out there that'll guide me through some of the downtimes and whenever that comes across. But it's going to be a new experience. So it's like this weekend, I wasn't exactly sure how it was going to be. So it's exciting as well. For training wise, you're right. 9 weeks. And we just spent the last 2 weeks tapering and got to recover now and got to taper 2 more weeks before the race. So the training block definitely isn't ideal. I would love a way bigger training block, but that's the cards that are dealt. And again, just got to roll off fitness, roll off maybe some confidence, and and see what we can pull together.
Yeah, it's a great point. And just looking back at what you've done in the last couple of months, winning the Red Hot 55K, which we talked about, Behind the Rocks 50, and now Canyons, you're clearly in good shape. So yeah, the priority should be to recover from this huge effort, be proud of yourself for a few days before you start getting in Western States mode. And then, yeah, show up with that confidence and with the fitness that you clearly already have. No need to go break any records here in the next 2 months.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No new training philosophies or something like that. It would such a small window.
Totally, dude. And yeah, just approach it with the same attitude you did at Canyons. Respect the distance. Play it like a chess game. You know, you're not going to win in the first few moves unless you're, watching the Queen's Gambit or whatever. But well, dude, this has been so fun. It's been awesome to get to know you a little bit more and to learn your story and to help you share it. I think a lot of people are going to be very excited to see you line up in Olympic Valley in just a couple of months. Before we let you go, I just want to give you an opportunity to shout out your running community there in Salt Lake City. It's been amazing to see the sort of group that you guys have put together. Obviously, you mentioned Jimmy a few times, Jimmy Elam, who's been on the podcast. You mentioned Noah Brodingham, who finished third to you, and Max King at Canyons over the weekend is a great runner himself. So maybe just give the listeners a little glimpse into the little posse you guys have in Salt Lake City and how that's helped your training.
Yeah, we don't have like an official group or anything, but yeah, out here we're just like a bunch of full-time working guys that get together when we can. We all have different schedules. And we have fun in the mountains. And it's a great time. We always talk about being more structured, but it doesn't end up happening as much as we would want because again, our just job situations are so different. And also our training is a lot different as well. I always joke whenever I'm with Jimmy, I'm going to have a fun day because you usually do fun things with Jimmy. It's not going to be like there's a road run that day. Yeah. And same thing with Noah. But yeah, we have a really fun group here. It's just it's a great training ground and good people.
Well, awesome, man. Well, again, congratulations. Bring that blue collar work ethic. All you guys having day jobs and still kicking ass. It's inspiring to see, and I think it'll serve you well here in a couple short months. But Anthony, thanks so much for joining us on the show, and can't wait to see how things go for you at Western States.
Thanks so much for having me on. It was fun. Okay.